Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come. We're going to be doing the Black Ops Cold War retrospective review. I've done these for every single Call of Duty from Call of Duty 4 all the way up to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019. I've been doing these for the past 2 or so years, and you can definitely check all of those out, but some of the older ones are definitely much less quality than some of the more recent ones because I've done them so long ago. But this one I'm very excited to do because Black Ops Cold War is a very controversial Call of Duty title. Tons of people love it, tons of people hate it. Very different between the modes as well. You have campaign, you have multiplayer, you have zombies, and we're even going to be talking about Warzone. Although Warzone's not technically in Cold War, there has been a ton of updates to Warzone that give it that Cold War aesthetic throughout the Cold War lifecycle, and we will be talking about whatever Warzone did this past year in this video, because to me that is part of Cold War. Anything that happened during the Modern Warfare lifecycle was part of Modern Warfare, but the Warzone stuff that's happening now, that is part of Cold War. And then of course Vanguard's going to get their time with Warzone. I think it's worth talking about it as its own thing rather than just as being part of Modern Warfare, because that's just kind of what Warzone is. It's technically its own thing now. As always for these retrospective reviews, we are not ranking the game just on how it is right now or just on how it was when it first launched. We are talking about the entirety of the game, so from launch day all the way up until today, the current day, and how the game's been throughout that entire time. Of course, I do prioritize how it is now as opposed to how it might have been at launch, but how it was at launch is still important to whether or not the game is considered a good or bad game, in my opinion. Of course, these are all my opinions, keep that in mind. It's impossible to completely rank these and talk about these games in a 100% objective manner because there's always going to be preferences that exist, and those preferences will be talked about substantially in this video. Every mode has a different point value as always, and it all adds up to 100, and then we're going to get the final score at the end. Campaign, because I don't care as much about the campaign as the other modes, and it also just doesn't really add to the longevity of the game because you play it once and you never play it again. Campaign's only getting 10 points because of that. Multiplayer and zombies both get 35 points each because multiplayer and zombies is very, very important to these Call of Duty experience, especially for longevity. And for Warzone, it's going to be out of 20 points because although I said I wanted to talk about Warzone in this video, it still does feel like it's its own thing now, its own game. So I don't want to talk about it too much and have it make a big impact on the Cold War score, but it still matters because all the updates they made in Warzone were all based on things they were doing in Cold War. And we're talking about everything here. We're talking about the content, the balancing, the updates, everything when it comes to Black Ops Cold War's game we are talking about today. So let's jump into it, starting off with the campaign. Black Ops Cold War's campaign is good, but not great. There was a lot of praise for this campaign when it first came out, but I feel like it's kind of died down over time, and I think people are kind of realizing it wasn't the greatest campaign ever, but it had a lot of promise to it, and we're going to talk about that, of course, in this video. So first of all, one of the best things about this campaign is the diversity in the locations. Location is huge to me. I think the atmosphere really is completely dependent on the location, and some campaigns, especially Modern Warfare 2019's campaign, they kind of go to like the same locations for the whole campaign. You're in like the same 2 or 3 countries the whole game, and it gets really boring really fast when you're in the same sort of color palette like locations. But this game goes to all sorts of places. You have missions in Russia, you have missions in Vietnam, you have missions in the United States, which is very rare for us to see missions in the United States in these campaigns. Of course, some of the old Modern Warfare games did that a lot, but this game doing that a ton was awesome. Some places in Germany, there was that one mission in Berlin, which was incredible. A lot of different color schemes in all these different missions. None of them feel the same, which is really important to making the game's atmosphere feel diverse as it goes along. They added this new takedown mechanic into the campaign, which I thought was kind of fun. It was a fun little gameplay element that they added where you kind of just go behind someone and you could stab them, kind of like from Far Cry. And I like those. They kind of are pretty satisfying to do, and it just adds to the cinematic vibe of the campaign, so that's awesome. The Cold War tie-ins to real-life events were pretty fantastic. I think this game had a lot of tie-ins to actual events, but it put a fictional spin on it with the whole Black Ops spy element to it, which was definitely somewhat based on reality in some ways, but a lot of it was also obviously fictional. And I like that. I like when they take real-world events and kind of spin them in a fictional manner. The old Black Ops game did that as well, and I really do appreciate that. The soundtrack in this game is by far one of the best soundtracks we've ever had in a Call of Duty game. Jack Wall is a mastermind with his music. He composed it beautifully, and I just really love it. I mean, it carries over into the multiplayer and zombies as well. A lot of great music in this game. The characters in this one mostly are good. There's going to be a couple we'll talk about in the negative section, which I don't think are very good, but Adler especially. Adler is one of the coolest characters in any Call of Duty campaign. He's definitely the most developed character in this campaign. I think Park is a cool, companion as well. She doesn't really do that much, but for when she is present, she's pretty cool. But Adler himself, to me, is one of the most interesting characters in any Call of Duty campaigns, and he's actually very well fleshed out in the game as well. And when it comes to the other characters, it gives some importance to the multiplayer operators, because of course in multiplayer you're playing as a lot of these campaign characters as operators, and I do like how it gives those characters story importance. So when you're playing as them in this multiplayer, even though I don't care about story in the multiplayer, I never really think about the story in the multiplayer, it is cool to think like, okay, I'm playing as these people in multiplayer, and it kind of just adds a little bit more enjoyment to the story when you know you can play them in the multiplayer modes. There's also a lot of interesting story elements with the CIA mind controlling, and I really dig that. Like the twist at the end with Bell, I thought was really well done. It was not something I predicted at all. I kind of just assumed they were doing this unanimous character as kind of like a way to make it so you can be the character yourself. You can kind of play as whoever you want to play as, but in reality it was an actual character who was originally part of the KGB, and I thought that was brilliantly done, and how they had the whole CIA mind controlling program to try and get him to have these implanted memories. It's definitely based on fiction. Not all of that is stuff that's actually real. Some of it is, some of it's conspiracies, but I think that's really fun to discuss and talk about, and this game brings up a lot of interesting ideas about what could have possibly went down in the Cold War era. And as a whole, I think this game just does a great job of immersing you in the Cold War era. It does feel very 80s. There's a lot of amazing 80s songs playing throughout the campaign, which definitely adds to the 80s feel. And when you go back into the Vietnam missions, they also put you back into the 60s. They do a fantastic job of this throughout the entire campaign, and I definitely appreciated that. Then we get to the negatives. There's a couple things I really disliked about this campaign. First of all, although I liked the whole twist with Bell, having a playable protagonist who doesn't speak, it has always been boring to me. I've never liked that in Call of Duty, and they've done this a bunch. This is not a uncommon thing. I've never liked it though. My favorite Call of Duty campaigns tend to be the ones where the main character is speaking, like Infinite Warfare's campaign. I loved Nick Reyes' character because he's actually speaking the whole time. He feels like a character. Bell doesn't feel like a character. Of course, that's the whole point. You're supposed to kind of make the character yourself. But I'm not the writer, I'm not the creator of these games. Like, I want to be playing this for a good story. I'm not trying to create the story myself. I like creative writing, but that's not what I'm doing when I'm playing this game. I want this game to be a story I can experience, that these writers want to tell me, but I can't feel that when the main character doesn't have a single personality to him or her, or whatever you want it to be, because you can literally make the character's gender whatever you want, which is an interesting idea in theory. I just much prefer it when the character actually has character to them. I mean, you even can see this in the recent Far Cry game. You can choose the character's gender, which is cool, and they actually make the character still have a personality regardless of which gender you choose, which is really cool. It's not like you have to make the personality yourself. It's not like they're just nameless and they don't speak at all. So Bell, very boring in my opinion. Woods and Mason feel irrelevant to this game. There's like one or two missions with them where they actually do anything of importance, but the rest of it, they do like nothing. And I really do feel like this is because this campaign was a bit rushed. I don't think it was originally intended to be a Black Ops game, obviously, before Treyarch even came onto the project. And then when they did come onto the project, I fully believe they were planning a full-on Black Ops reboot, but then plans changed, and then they decided, okay, we're going to make it a Black Ops sequel instead. And I really do believe they cut a lot of stuff with Woods and Mason in this game. I think they were supposed to be a much bigger focus, but then they kind of just cut back on them a little bit when they realized they weren't doing the Black Ops reboot, and instead it was supposed to actually be a sequel to Black Ops, 2010. and I just don't enjoy their characters in this at all. It's not because they're different voice actors. I can care less about the voice actor thing. It would be nice to have the original voice actors, but I don't care that much. The issue is the characters just don't have any sort of development, really. You have that one mission where Mason has a little bit of interesting scenes where he like has flashbacks of the numbers, which was cool, but it was just that one little Easter egg, and they don't really touch on it again. Their characters feel so inexistent in this campaign, and I feel like that was a massive problem because they were really important in the original Black Ops. So to kind of just have them in the background this whole campaign was really weird to me. It was also a very buggy game as well, like especially at launch. It's better now, of course, but when I first played this campaign at launch, there was not a single cutscene I could watch that wasn't lagging like a motherfucker. This was one of the buggiest campaigns I've ever played. Of course, that's completely attributed to the game being rushed and mostly produced during the pandemic towards the latter half of the production of this game. And that's just, I guess, to be expected at that point. But this was just a buggy campaign, that's for sure. One of the buggiest I've ever played. And the ending was very meh. Like, I was really enjoying the campaign to a degree up until the last mission, honestly, and then that's when I kind of realized this whole campaign wasn't as great as I originally thought it was, although I still loved a lot of it, of course. But the ending just was not good. It was very anticlimactic because it was setting up this big final mission where you have to try to stop the nukes from detonating, and you can either, do that exactly, or you can do the other ending, which was like the gimmicky ending, which we'll talk about in a second. But the main ending, the good ending, you just do the mission. Like, there's nothing stopping you from it. There's no like, oh my god, we might not be able to do it. There's no intensity. There's no like final climactic moment. It's just they just do the mission, and they succeeded in like 5 minutes. And then the gimmicky second mission, which you can do, I thought was just really gimmicky. It was fun at first. I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. You get to kill Woods, Mason, and Park, but it was just a gimmick because it's not canon or anything, and there's nothing canon about it. You're just killing your own people in these really weird ways, and it's okay. It's a little bit of a shock at first to see them get killed, but like, then that's it, and then it's just a bad ending. It's not canon or anything, so it doesn't really matter. It's a cool little Easter egg, sure, but it doesn't really matter, and I think it confused a lot of people who played that and thought maybe that was canon, and then got really confused because they're like, wait, what do you mean Woods and Mason die here? But it's not canon, so really weird. Overall, I really did enjoy this campaign, but I thought those negatives I mentioned did bring it down enough to the point where I was not able to give this as high of a score as I wanted to. But I'm going to give this campaign a 7 out of 10, which is a pretty decent score, but obviously that's not towards the higher end of most campaigns, which I'd usually give like 8s or 9s. So yeah, Cold War's campaign, definitely I like it a lot more than most of the more recent campaigns like Ghosts, Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3 campaigns, which I didn't think were very good, but in general, it's not that amazing. This is going to be the funnest part of the video. We're talking about Cold War's multiplayer. This has been a weird year because it was a very controversial multiplayer. I mean, there were so many people who despise this multiplayer, call it the worst multiplayer of all time, which, I mean, we hear that every year, but a lot of people say that. And there's also a lot of people who really love it. There's a lot of people who are also kind of in the middle on it. For me personally, you probably know my thoughts on this multiplayer, but let's talk about it because there's a lot of good stuff about this multiplayer, but there's also a lot of bad. Let's actually start off with the bad this time around. So first things first, skill-based matchmaking. Of course, we all know skill-based matchmaking is something that a lot of the hardcore community does not like. We know that. Personally, for me, I've kind of just gotten used to it at this point, and I don't think it's necessarily ruining the game like it is for some people. I would prefer if it wasn't there, or at least reduced substantially, but it doesn't ruin it because I've kind of found ways to work around it, not in terms of reverse boosting, but rather just playing more casually, playing more relaxed, and you just kind of get easier lobbies if you play more relaxed more of the time, and then when you do get those easier lobbies, you try a little bit harder. It's kind of like a cycle at that point, and I don't really mind playing like that. It doesn't bother me that much. If anything, it's less sweaty than it was before. Because of that, because I'm playing more relaxed, you just have to not care about your KD as much, but it is kind of frustrating that being better at the game is kind of punishing you to an extent. I do understand that. I don't think it's game breaking though, because not every lobby is going to be like that unless you're trying your heart out every single match, which I don't think most people do. But skill-based matchmaking, I've kind of learned to deal with it, and I understand why it's in the game, but it's still going to be part of the negatives for this video. The microtransaction system in this game, same thing as Modern Warfare 2019. I don't like it. I don't like it because there's no free ways to earn a lot of stuff in this game. There's some free outfits, there's some free challenges you can do for some outfits and stuff, but most of the good stuff is all behind a paywall, whether it's in the battle pass or in the shop. I kind of wish they had some grindable ways to get these things, but as it is currently, there really isn't. There's a couple free tiers in the battle pass, and that's really it. It's kind of disappointing. I understand why they do it, money, but is it better than supply drops? Maybe. I don't know. I personally would rather having a supply drop system like World War II than what we have now, but I know people don't like supply drops, so I guess this is what we have to get in return. The score streak system, same thing as skill-based matchmaking. I don't hate this as much as other people do because I've kind of learned to understand the system a little bit better, and I don't think it's destroying the gameplay as much as people think it is, but it is destroying the gameplay in some modes. I don't think it's making it so noobs can get like the best streaks in the game. People say that all the time. They're like, oh, it sucks because noobs are able to get easy chopper gunners. At least in all the lobbies I've been in, I always check the scoreboard afterwards. Usually only the top like 2 to 3 people on each team, maybe like and I'm talking like a 12v12 mode, usually like 2 or 3 people at the top, maybe sometimes even just one, have more than like 6,000 score at the end of the game, meaning nobody's getting, no person at the bottom of the leaderboards are getting like any decent streak. So I don't think that's necessarily the biggest issue in the world with shitty players getting really good streaks, but it is an issue when you have some lower tier streaks like Air Patrol that are very powerful and was never heavily nerfed, which it should have been. And then these shitty players can get Air Patrols pretty easily and destroy your streaks that you actually spent some time to try to get. This also affects the longer modes more than the shorter modes. Shorter modes doesn't really matter that much. Team Deathmatch, I don't think the score streak system's negatively affecting that mode at all. But in something like Hardpoint or Combined Arms Domination, something that's going on for a long time, you do start to see that this does affect it, because I personally never go a game of Hardpoint without getting at least like 6,000 or 8,000 score. Like, it's very rare for me to play a game that's like at least 10 to 12 minutes long and to not get somewhat of a decent streak because of how the streak system is implemented into the game. You still have to go on streaks. You can't just expect to never go on streaks and get streaks, but I would have preferred a traditional score streak system. I don't think this was game breaking, but definitely was a bit of a problem. And the other issues with the streak system is that because they made them somewhat easier to get, they nerfed them as well. I mean, not only is Air Patrol definitely one of the best ones that can just destroy every single other streak in the game that's in the air, but also the streaks themselves just weren't very powerful. There was a lot of spawn protection, so if you used your streaks against people who just spawned, they basically wouldn't do anything. The maps weren't very well set up for using air streaks anyways. Like a lot of maps like Moscow and especially Checkmate, you can barely even get people inside of the map because it's like so hard to see. There's like so much stuff that's like covering the areas where you're trying to shoot down, and they're not even that good either because they don't do that much damage. So all in all, streaks in this game were kind of disappointing. I would have preferred it just to be like Black Ops 3, where they're just traditional score streaks and they're very powerful, just like they were in Black Ops 2 or even Black Ops 4. They had some pretty good streaks in that game as well, but they kind of just made it so they were a bit too easy to get for my liking, and also just the way the streak system worked. I don't think it was necessarily ruining the game, but it was definitely something I didn't like. There were some balance issues. We're going to talk about balance in the good because I think overall gun balance was actually really solid, but there were some balance issues throughout the DLC season, especially with guns like the Marshall, the Tech 9, and the EM2. They just did not properly balance them, and I personally believe this is something that they do for business. I think they purposely make the newer DLC guns really good so people are more likely to buy the bundles. They did similar things in Modern Warfare. It's like there's no way they release these new guns and don't realize how OP they are. Like, there's just no way. But sometimes they don't even nerf them good enough, though. That's the issue. They usually do nerf them, but the nerf is usually not as good as it should be. The Marshalls are still pretty damn good. There's also a lot of balance issues with sniper rifles in this game as well. Some people feel like they're too powerful, but other people feel like they're not powerful enough. But the reason why that's the case is because the people who don't feel like they're powerful enough are the people who like the quickscope, because quickscoping in this game is really bad. But snipers, if you just sit down and just hard scope, they're really good. They're really accurate, and the aim assist on them is insane. So there's definitely ways they could have balanced those a bit better. There's also this created class problem that I had in Modern Warfare as well, and I also have it in Vanguard. I would prefer a Pick 10 gunsmith hybrid system. What they have in this game makes it so you're forced to use a secondary, you're forced to use your attachments, you're forced to use your equipment, you're forced to use your perks. I would like some, mix and matching. They somewhat improved it in this game with wildcards by allowing you to get, more perks and more attachments, but they could have done it better. I think what they definitely should have done is each wild card, maybe let us use 3 wild cards. Each wild card lets you get 1 more perk or 1 more attachment. So I can get 1 more perk and 2 more attachments on my primary, or 2 more perks and 1 more attachment on my primary, rather than having to either get full on 3 more perks or full on 3 more attachments, which is how it currently is. I think it would have been cooler if we could have just had more variety in our customization with that. This game also had tons of bugs and glitches, especially in custom games. Like, I love to make custom modes to play with friends, but it was very buggy throughout the entire year pretty much, and I don't even know if they've ever fixed it. In the game as a whole, a lot of crashing at launch. I think the issues mostly have been fixed, but there was definitely a lot of issues with crashing and different bugs in this game, more than usual, again, probably because of the pandemic and them having to, rush this game a bit faster than they normally would make these games. And the last issue I have is the lack of playlist variety currently. Now, there's a lot of great modes in this game, and we'll talk about that later, but right now especially, they took out majority of the best modes in the game. Like Combined Arms, I love Combined Arms, is only 1 mosh pit, so you have to play whatever mode they give you in Combined Arms. Why not let me pick between Assault, Domination, and Hardpoint within Combined Arms? They don't let you do that, probably because there's not enough players maybe to fill up these lobbies, but I want choices, you know what I mean? And Cranked Hardpoint also is a fantastic mode. They don't even have it available anymore. You can only play it in certain playlists. If you play Nuketown 24/7, it might come up every now and then. That's the only place to play Cranked Hardpoint now, but there's no separate playlist for it, not even in Quick Play. I don't get why. Why not just keep these playlists around? If people want to play them, they'll play them, or just switch around the playlist more often, because they haven't really touched them in a while. And I'm really, really disappointed in that, because I really want to play Cranked Hardpoint. 12v12 Mosh Pit they also took out, so I don't get what they do with these playlists anymore. They did the same thing in Modern Warfare 2019. Just give us the playlists, man. People will play them if they like them. Those would be the more popular modes. And if you guys see that there's modes that people aren't playing, then I don't know, maybe throw those away. I don't know. I don't see the issue with keeping them around, especially with crossplay and free DLC. There should not be trouble finding lobbies in these games. I guess skill-based matchmaking kind of messes with that, but right now, I just don't get it. Give us more playlist options. Now let's talk about the good, because there's a lot to talk about in this category. First of all, the time to kill is perfect in this game. Of course, there's some balancing issues I've mentioned, but that's all I'm balancing. The time to kill itself, the actual how long it takes to kill people on average with guns in this game, especially full auto guns, is perfect. It feels great. Gunfights actually feel like they exist in this game. I've had plenty of situations in this game where I'm getting shot at and I can do a nice little 180, turn on that guy, and kill him because he has bad accuracy or something. And I feel like there's a lot of situations like that in this game. It's not too slow to the point where it's impossible to take on multiple people at once, because it's not. I can come across a squad of 4 and I could take them out if I have good accuracy, and if those guys don't have good accuracy. But if they do, yeah, they'll probably kill me, just like they would if it was fast time to kill. But in fast time to kill, you don't get that same gunfight feel that you can easily get within this game, because the gunfights actually last some time, and I feel like it just makes the game so much faster because people are actually not afraid to move around the map. I'm always moving around the map in this game because I know if someone shoots at me from a distance, they won't laser beam me and shoot me in 2 to 3 shots. It'll take them a couple more shots than that, so I can actually move around effectively, get from point A to point B without having to worry too much about getting laser beamed and insta-killed across the map. Love the time to kill in this game. I think it's perfect. This game also has solid maps. I don't understand the complaint about the maps. The map design is literally the same as Black Ops 2 in this game. It's really not that different. It's got that traditional 3-lane feel to it. You have Moscow, Apocalypse, Collateral Strike. Tons of fantastic maps in this game, in my opinion. There's some bad ones, not really bad ones, but there's some average ones, I guess. I'm not a big fan of Cartel. Miami's I'm not crazy on that one. It's great in 12v12, but in 6v6 it's not that good. Garrison, I don't really like Checkmate that much, but they're not terrible. But the DLC especially, you got Diesel, Yamato, fantastic maps. And the remakes, some of the best maps ever are in this game because of the remakes. You have Raid, Standoff, Hijacked. I know people get kind of annoyed of seeing these maps again and again and again, but they're fantastic maps. So this game has so many of the most classic and fantastic maps from Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2. Yes, I would have loved some more from World at War and Black Ops 1, some ones we've never seen before, but I mean, we did get a couple. We got Drive-In. Drive-In's really cool. That's cool to see. We got Zoo as well, so if you like those maps, you got those. So I was a fan of the remakes they brought back. I thought it added a lot to the game because I love those maps. They're great, great maps. The colors in this game, amazing. This is one of the most colorful Call of Duties ever. The atmosphere is incredible, that 80s feel that a lot of these maps have. The Pines, Miami especially, really feel 80s with all the colors and such, and even some of the other maps just feel more Cold War-esque, like Yamato, for example. A lot of the snowier map environments all have that, which is great. I would say this game has the best skins and camos out of any Call of Duty game ever. Now, of course, the issue is most of them are behind paywalls, which is unfortunate, but still, these skins are awesome. I mean, they have literally John McClane from Die Hard in this game. You have Ghostface from Scream. Those are just two awesome, iconic characters they brought in from really cool events. But you have so many more skins in this game that are awesome, and camos and blueprints that are just really cool. I mean, Black Ops 4 had some amazing ones as well, but this game, I feel like, takes the cake in terms of the best looking skins ever. And DM Ultra and Diamond especially is awesome. Now, DM Ultra I'm not crazy about. I never got it though, so I don't really care that much, but Diamond especially though, that is just, oh my god. Diamond in this game is by far the best Diamond we've ever seen. I don't know, maybe Black Ops 4 because of the Rainbow Diamond, but this one just looks so much cleaner, especially with the newer graphics, so I gotta say, really enjoy it. Gunsmith was definitely improved upon substantially in this game with showing actual percent values. Now, I don't think it was as in-depth as Modern Warfare when it comes to the attachments and what you can put on your guns and how you can change your guns, but in terms of giving you just good percents and letting you know exactly what the attachments are doing, and also the attachments just felt more balanced than they were in Modern Warfare as well. I definitely appreciate that. I felt myself changing a lot more attachments in this game than I ever would in Modern Warfare. And the perk balance in this game was actually decent. Like, I never found myself using the same exact perks in every class, especially with perk greed. I changed up my perks often. Like, there was a lot of different options, and I actually really appreciate that. Also, I really appreciate them bringing back Ninja, which wasn't in Modern Warfare, and also making the minimap just like it was in traditional Call of Duty, which isn't really even a positive. It's crazy how I even have to mention that as a positive, but because Modern Warfare decided not to do it, it was nice to get those back in this game. And the gun balance, like I said before, although a couple guns here and there were a little bit unbalanced, for the most part, I feel like majority of the guns in this game are very usable. I don't find there being that many guns that are really bad to the point where you can't use them. Most guns are very usable. You look at the ARs, only AR I don't like is the C58, or is that what's called, the C58, C38? I don't know. Whatever that one gun is that everyone is pretty much aware that's pretty crap, it's the only bad one. Everything else is really good. The SMGs are all pretty good as well. Not a lot of guns in this game that I feel like are worthless to use. They all feel like they have a purpose, which gives the game a lot of variety in what I'm going to use. I love how they show your kill streak number on the screen in this game. That's a really cool little feature. It's a really small thing, but I like it. I like knowing exactly what kind of a kill streak I'm on, so having that little number pop up on screen every time you get a new kill is really cool. I like the inclusion of the combined arms and fireteam modes, although fireteam, they could have utilized those maps better. They could have cut some of the sections of the fireteam maps out and maybe utilized them in 6v6. I think that would have definitely been good for the community, but I still liked those modes. I found them to be kind of fun, especially fireteam elimination, even though I didn't play it all that much, but it was still nice to have it. Combined arms especially, though, is one of my favorite parts of this game. Just 12v12 in general is a lot of fun, especially on Miami and, of course, on Armada. Armada is such a fun map, man. I love, like, Combined Arms Assault or Hardpoint on Armada. It's a lot of fun. The seasonal events were awesome in this game as well. You had the Halloween event, which recently happened, which was pretty cool. You had some Halloween-themed things that you can earn. And the 80s Action Heroes event, to me, was probably the best Call of Duty event ever. They added Die Hardpoint, which is now known as Cranked Hardpoint, which unfortunately, like I said before, does not exist anymore, which is stupid unless you play certain modes, but it's not like available as its own separate playlist. But Die Hardpoint / Cranked Hardpoint is the best mode in Call of Duty. It takes the two fastest modes, Cranked and Hardpoint, puts them together, and just makes this insanely chaotic, fun-filled mode. I love it. They also added a nuke to this mode, and then recently also, I think like in Season 5 or something, they added nuke as its own thing within the main game itself, which I love. I think Treyarch games always kind of annoyed me that they wouldn't add nukes, even though I understood why they didn't. I always wanted them though. I liked nukes, you know, I like having them, and I'm really glad that Cold War went ahead and added a nuke. So now there's actually a nuke in this game in all modes. So that's really cool. But each season as well, you had the 6 seasons, all felt very unique in their theme. They all felt very different with the color schemes and with the vibes and the locations, and they did such a good job with that. I mean, they nailed all of that, and even some of the story elements, which, like I said, I don't really care about story in multiplayer. It is interesting how they continued the campaign story with these multiplayer and Warzone cutscenes. Also, little features like the music player in arcade games are kind of cool. Like the music player, not many people use. I use that in Zombies more than anything, but it's a cool little feature to have, especially in the menus. You can listen to all sorts of different music from Call of Duty's history. And the arcade games, although they're kind of pointless, every now and then I kind of like to just go in there and play some of these old retro arcade games, and it definitely adds to the Cold War 80s feel of this game, so I definitely appreciate it. So multiplayer in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, I really do enjoy. I'm going to give it a 30 out of 35. That might be a bit high for a lot of people, but I gotta say, man, there's not a lot of things ruining this game for me. I still enjoyed it to this day. I plan on continuing playing it a lot even throughout Vanguard's life cycle because that's how much I enjoy it. I'm very excited to play this game more, probably go for DM Ultra one of these days. So yeah, that is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War's multiplayer. Now let's move on to Warzone. There's not really much to talk about with Warzone because personally I didn't play a ton of it this past year. I only really like to play Warzone with other people, so if no one else is available to play, I don't really bother. And I don't know, Warzone to me is awesome though. Like, I can't really deny that I love Warzone even though I don't even play it that much. So it's hard for me to give a solid full opinion on it, but I'm still going to do it because I did play it a lot, especially back in December and January when they first did the Cold War integration. To me, Rebirth Island, which is what they included with the Cold War update, is even more enjoyable than Verdansk. Like, I think Rebirth just takes everything that Warzone does right and just kind of elevates it and makes it faster paced and less campy, because obviously Rebirth is smaller, so people just are likely to camp less, and they really do. There's less camping in Rebirth. It's definitely faster paced, especially the Insurgents modes. Those are awesome because it gets you back in the action. You don't have to, die and then you have to restart a whole new game and take like 5 minutes to find a new lobby. You just hop right back into the battle, assuming the rest of your team stays alive. And I love how that flows and how the gameplay works in Rebirth. It's just like Alcatraz from Black Ops 4's Blackout, and I love it. I think it was definitely one of the best parts they added to Warzone ever. In the Cold War Verdansk revamp, which they did to, Verdansk in, I believe it was April, although I would have preferred a whole new map. Of course, we're getting a new map soon, so it wasn't the biggest deal in the world, but I actually like the Rebirth, or the Cold War revamp more than the OG Verdansk. I think the colors look a little bit more interesting. I think the additions to the dam area, making it Summit instead, was a lot cooler. And they also added Die Hard's Tower, which they actually added this, I think, before they even did that. No, it was after. It was a month after. It was in May of 2021. I thought that Die Hard Tower, that was one of the coolest things Warzone's ever done, in my opinion, because I love Die Hard, and seeing that tower literally in the game in downtown was awesome. There's a lot of cool modes they added throughout the year as well. I think they did a pretty good job with new game modes, and that's really all I have to say. Like, they did a good job with keeping Warzone updated throughout the year. Then we get into the negatives though, because there's a lot of negatives, and this really has nothing to do with Treyarch, so it is weird to include it in this game, but I want to talk about it. The other issues are obviously a lot of gun balancing issues, especially the MAC-10, the DMR, the FFAR, a couple guns throughout the life cycle that they just could not properly balance. I think the Amelie at one point, or whatever the gun was called, the one Amelie-like gun, there was another gun, I think the C58 was OP at one point. A lot of gun balancing issues, especially with DLC guns. They just couldn't properly balance them for some reason, and it took them a while sometimes to patch them, and the meta was always kind of annoying. Someone was always using one specific loadout at all times. And yeah, I just think they need to do better with gun balancing, that's for sure. And last thing that I really have to say is the cheating. Obviously, there's a lot of hacking within Warzone. Personally, though, I haven't experienced much of it. I haven't. I'll admit, I probably came across like one cheater in my entire life. I play on Xbox and I turn crossplay off, so that's probably why. But I have to talk about it because I know a lot of people experience it who are playing on crossplay or with PC or on PC, so I have to include it. And it takes away from what Warzone could be based on those complaints. But that's really all I have to say about Warzone. Like I said, I think it's doing its job. I think it's just fine. I like the addition of the Cold War guns in Warzone, aside from the balancing issues. I think they feel good in Warzone. I think they play well for the most part. Rebirth, like I said, is fantastic. And that Cold War Verdansk revamp, awesome looking. Definitely like it better than the OG. But I'm very excited to see the Vanguard integration even more. I don't really have much to complain about with Warzone. It's hard for me to complain about it when I find it to be just an enjoyable mode that I play with friends every now and then. It's very casual. It's not a very competitive thing to me. I know Warzone definitely has a competitive aspect to it, but it's more of a casual thing to me. I play it every now and then with my friends. Don't really care about it solo. Don't really post videos on it either because, like I said, it's very casual for me. I'm going to give it an 18 out of 20, which might seem high to some people, but like I said, that's just how much I enjoy it. It's only losing 2 points because of the balancing issues and the little bit of hacking that I've seen. Well, a lot of hacking that I've seen online, but in terms of what I've experienced, it's only been a little bit. So Warzone, pretty solid integration. Very excited to see what they do with Vanguard. Now let's talk about zombies. It's so hard to talk about zombies in Cold War because it's not really a bad mode, it's just so disappointing compared to previous entries. I mean, I'm a big fan of Black Ops 3 and even Black Ops 4 and Infinite Warfare, which I know not everyone talks about all the time and sort of when they're talking about the really good zombies modes, but I really do love those maps and the way a lot of the game kind of feels and such and a lot of the Easter eggs, but Cold War to me takes a massive step backwards and kind of makes the game way too bare bones for my liking. We're going to talk about the good first though, because there are some good things to zombies in this game, and as a whole, I don't think it's really a bad mode, just incredibly disappointing. So first of all, this has some of the best mechanics we've ever seen in Call of Duty Zombies history. I honestly feel like the core gameplay mechanics are pretty damn good in terms of the armor system, how it feels to kill zombies themselves, all the different like salvage drops that you can use for the different stations. I love the weapon rarities, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well, because I think that was one of the coolest things they did. And it just plays well in terms of casual gameplay flow with having 3 different Pack-a-Punch tiers. There's a lot of stuff to go for when you're just casually playing for high rounds. And if that's all you care to do, this mode is pretty good for that. I'll say, like, it's not bad at all for that. There's also great weapon customization, of course, connecting back to the weapon rarities. Having all these different rarities of weapons just makes it so everything is viable. I feel like, at least for the first, like, 30 or 40 rounds, everything feels usable if you have it tiered all the way up to the highest rarity and tiered all the way up to the highest Pack-a-Punch. Everything feels viable, and in the loadouts, you can put so many different attachments on it with the gunsmith, and there's tons of customization, by far the most customization in zombies when it comes to your actual gun itself, so that's awesome. A lot of outside of the game grinding you can do in order to level up your gun so you can get the best possible attachments on it, and ever since they added the ability to actually make specific zombie loadouts, it's not a problem anymore. Before it was a problem because you could only put your attachments on your loadout weapon, but now you can apply it to literally any gun if you make a custom blueprint for it. And so you can put whatever attachments you want on whatever gun you want, literally just in the game, and it's a fantastic system. Connecting the leveling up and battle pass stuff to Warzone and multiplayer definitely helped the zombies replayability, because imagine if we didn't have the ability to level up our battle pass in zombies, or we couldn't level up our guns or anything like that. I would feel much less inclined to play zombies as much, so I do think, especially for the casual audience, combining all of that is good. I don't like how the levels are combined. I've said this many times in the past. I do like having separate levels for like a total prestige level. They don't even have prestiges, so I guess it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But in terms of gun levels, attachments, all of that, the battle pass, it's good that that's all connected. Also the operators, I don't like how we don't have a crew. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but being able to use the operators is still a good system because I have tons of skins I'd love to use, not just in multiplayer and Warzone, but also in zombies. Having different game modes other than just round-based is pretty damn cool in this game. Of course, Onslaught was not available for all players for a long time, but now it is, and I do really find Onslaught Containment to be a ton of fun. It's a good way to utilize multiplayer assets in zombies without adding a ton of extra dev time on the zombies developers, so they could just give us some extra modes to just have fun with. And Outbreak is kind of the same deal, except I do think maybe they put a little bit too much work in Outbreak, which sounds weird because I have 2 complaints with Outbreak. First of all, I think the game mode is just not in depth enough in order for me to really fully enjoy it, but at the same time, I kind of wish they just didn't do it so they can spend more time on maybe another round-based map. But when you just look at the game itself, the inclusion of Outbreak is still better than if we just didn't have it at all. Obviously, if they gave us more round-based content, I probably wouldn't have a problem with that, but I don't really know if the inclusion of Outbreak took away that much dev time in order to do another round-based map, because Outbreak, they literally have the exact maps ripped straight from multiplayer, which again is a smart utilization of resources. And I do kind of like Outbreak at some times. Like, it's not the most replayable mode in the world, but playing it once every now and then, it's not that bad, especially how it is now. There's enough objectives, there's enough locations, and the Easter eggs, at least the first one, was a lot of fun. I wasn't a big fan of the second Easter egg, but the first one was a lot of fun. Probably one of the better Easter eggs in Cold War as a whole. So yeah, Outbreak's fun to hop on every now and then, but especially once you get past, like, you know, World 6, I don't really have much fun with it after that, so I usually just exfil at that point, and I think it's a cool mode. It's just not the best thing in the world. I think Onslaught Containment is definitely a lot more enjoyable, and then Dead Ops Arcade 3 is probably the best part of Cold War Zombies. I love Dead Ops Arcade 3. I have so much fun with this mode. I can't get enough of it. The first-person mode is even better than the regular mode, and I really do think this is one of the best parts of any recent Call of Duty, to be completely honest. Like, there's so much depth to Dead Ops Arcade 3. There's so much to it. It's insane. So big applause to them for Dead Ops Arcade 3. That's a really awesome part of Black Ops Cold War Zombies. Having said that, there's some big things that I don't like about Cold War Zombies, and the main thing that I feel, the lack of personality on these round-based maps. Now, I don't mean that the maps don't have, like, any good story to it, because there's a lot of good story elements, especially with the intel, which I don't give a shit about the intel, but it's there for the people who like the story, so that's cool. The cutscenes are fine. They're not like anything too special, but they're fine cutscenes. They're enjoyable. And I think the maps look good. They have good color schemes to them. That's definitely cool. But I don't feel the same personality that I would feel in a map like Shadows of Evil, or Origins, or Der Eisendrache, or 9, or Ancient Evil. These maps don't have very distinct themes to them. They might have a distinct location, a different country, but that's about it. They're all still at either some sort of a military base, or some sort of research facility that might exist in a place that already exists, I guess. Mauer der Toten's probably the most interesting location. I loved the location for Forsaken, but at the end of the day, it is ripped straight from campaign, which isn't a big deal, but when you've played that campaign mission before and you play it for the first time in Zombies, you kind of thinking to yourself the whole time, well, I know the exact layout of this map. I thought it would be very different, and it was for some of the areas of Forsaken, but a lot of it was literally ripped straight from campaign, so it didn't feel different enough to really warrant a new reaction first time playing it, but it was still a cool location nonetheless. But it's not very personality driven like a lot of the Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, and Infinite Warfare maps were. It also doesn't help that the maps don't have a main crew, so we don't have characters to connect to on these maps. The operators, they have some personality, don't get me wrong, but when you have a specific crew, it really does change the experience substantially. So I'm definitely not a big fan of how the maps just don't have much personality to them, and especially with the soundtracks. There's good music in the Zombies mode, there is, but there's not that much of it, not nearly as much as what you'd see in Black Ops 3 or Black Ops 4, and a lot of it's reused from campaign or reused from other maps. There's not a lot of good original music that's consistently playing throughout the map like you'd see in all other Zombies modes. You have your round change music and stuff, that's cool and all, but there's not that much more beyond that. Definitely very disappointing in the soundtrack department on these maps, and especially with the just overall personality that these maps have. I don't feel like they have that much. It's also a shame that this Zombies mode feels way too casual. Like, it's taking a lot of the hardcore Easter egg elements of prior games, a lot of the complicated things, a lot of the in-depth things that I love about Zombies, and just kind of strips it to a very bare bones feeling. Like, I don't feel like Cold War Zombies has that much depth to their maps. The maps are very simplistic. You can get Pack-a-Punch in a matter of minutes, you have everything you need pretty quickly, and you just kind of train around zombies until you get bored. There's only a couple side quests on each map, and the side quests kind of suck because they don't really give you anything that great, and they just give you things that you could earn yourself anyways. You don't have to do them in order to get them. And the Easter eggs are some of the most boring, simple Easter eggs we've ever seen. I think Mauer der Toten's is definitely my favorite because it actually has a pretty good boss fight, And the Outbreak Easter egg, the first one's pretty good as well, but the rest of them just feel very plain and simple, and they're all just way too easy in my opinion. Like, I don't ever feel any sense of urgency in this zombies mode unless I forcefully handicap myself to make it more difficult, like maybe forcing myself to use weapons that are less like useful, I guess. I don't know. And I don't like to forcefully handicap myself. I prefer to be able to use whatever I want to use, but make the enemies more threatening, make the zombies more threatening, something, make the map laid out in a way that just makes it a little bit harder. But there's just so much to this game that's just so easy. I feel like I have a million lives and it's just way too simple. And the Easter eggs, again, way too simplistic. There's no depth to them. There's no puzzle steps. There's nothing that I have to use my brain in order to do for the Easter eggs. It's literally just go, you know, fetch this thing, give it to this guy, maybe do a little lockdown here and there, and then maybe, you know, go throw a box at 3 different things around the map, shoot this, shoot that, and then you're in the boss fight. Like, there's no depth to the Easter egg. There's no puzzles or hunting or trying to figure things out. It's just very simplistic. Do this, do that, do this, do that. And I get why they did that. They want to make it easier for the majority of players, but the problem with that is, why can't you do that while also retaining a hardcore quest in there? Maybe make an easy mode for those players who want it to be very easy. Give them an easy mode, but don't ruin the experience for the players who want something that's kind of similar to what we've seen in Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, Infinite Warfare. And I don't mean the really tedious, annoying steps. I mean the fun, in-depth puzzle steps and the fun, crazy action steps that are legitimately difficult to complete, like Mephistopheles boss fight in Infinite Warfare. Like, that is really hard. There's nothing that comes even close to that difficulty in Cold War. The one Outbreak, the Legion boss fight, was actually pretty difficult when it first dropped, and I was really happy with it, but then they completely just made it way too easy as time went on. But not even just making it more difficult, I mean, go even further than that and just make everything have more depth to it and make it more replayable and more fun. Give us more things to unlock and earn on the maps themselves, so we can have more things to do on the maps themselves, so I don't feel like there's nothing to do. D Machine, I loaded up. What is there to do on the map other than level up your guns and kill zombies? That's all you can do. I get bored of that. I want quests, I want things to do, and I don't feel like this game provided that at all. So in that case, I kind of feel like they took a giant leap backwards when it comes to replayability, which is why Cold War Zombies was not very replayable for me. So although I find a lot of the elements and the mechanics of Cold War Zombies to be really good, this giant step backwards in terms of the feel of zombies, I think really hurt it for me. But it's still going to get a pretty damn good rating regardless of that, which is probably surprising to a lot of you. I feel like a lot of you expect me to give this a really bad rating because I've criticized zombies so much, but it's going to get a 27 out of 35, which really is not that bad. Like, that's not bad at all, but it's just disappointing. Like, that's the thing. It's not like this is bad or anything. It's just really disappointing compared to what I wish it was, which is unfortunate. As a whole, Black Ops Cold War was a really divisive Call of Duty title that I personally really enjoyed. I had a lot of fun with it despite a lot of its issues, and I think there's definitely some promise in Treyarch's future games, assuming they keep their own traditional design philosophy intact, but maybe they just get more time to complete the game, because I think a lot of the issues with their game this year was mainly surrounded upon just not having enough time to complete it. There was a lot of things that had to be rushed, and of course that's what caused a lot of the bugs and glitches. And when it comes to making the game way too casual friendly, especially in the zombies aspect, I think that was more on Activision. I think Activision wanted them to just make the game a lot easier for newer players who came in because of Modern Warfare 2019, which brought in a ton of new players with Warzone. So I understand why the game is the way it is, but personally, there's a lot of things that would have changed for this game to make it even better. Based on the prior scores for the 4 game modes, Black Ops Cold War is going to get a final score of an 82 out of 100, which of course gives it an 82% score. And comparing that to the prior scores I've given other Call of Duties, I believe this comes in at the number 6 spot, but keep in mind that my opinions on the prior COD games have changed substantially since I've done those reviews, so this list could be very different. I think right now I would probably decrease some of my scores for some of these CODs and increase scores for others. So if you guys want me to revisit these retrospective reviews and do them for the older Call of Duties going all the way back up, let me know, because a lot of the older ones I do feel like I didn't do a great job with them because I made them back in like 2019. before my content was of decent quality at all. So let me know if you guys want to see that. Let me know if you want to see more videos on Black Ops Cold War, or if you prefer I just move over to Vanguard and play that some more. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, and peace out.